All right, everyone. This evening, we will be hearing from Brian Lee. He will be telling us more about the Corvallis Carbon Offset Fund, a little bit of history around it, I believe, as well as discussion around replication in other spaces. So the floor is yours, Brian.
Wow, awesome. I just want to thank the people here at this facility for providing the internet communications. It's actually a Pacific Regency assisted care facility. I have a few people I know over here, so hopefully we'll have a good, stable connection compared to what I have at home. So I'm Brian Lee. I'm with the Corvallis Carbon Offset Fund, also with the Corvallis Interfaith Climate Justice Committee, who is the steering committee for the fund. The fund has been around for about a year and a half or two. It's small, relatively unknown, and it's sort of an advanced strategy for carbon offsetting the amount of carbon that's going into the atmosphere. So I guess I should say, okay, what's the general idea of a carbon offset? Well, we are putting plenty of carbon or carbon emissions into the air, which is warming the climate. We know how that goes. And what can we do to not only reduce the amount that's going in there, but also to try to subtract from the amount that's in there already? And that is through different means to either reduce emissions by improving the efficiency, going to cleaner types of energy sources, as well as removing it by different sequestration. And I prefer the natural sequestration modes, such as vegetation and trees, restoring habitat, for example. So if we can slow down the amount of carbon that's going up and actually pull some of it back down into the ground, that would be an advantage. Carbon offset is kind of a mathematical and somewhat theoretical way of saying, okay, if you put some in here and you take some out here, you will hopefully achieve a balance or a slowing of the increased rate at which you are adding to the climate CO2. And by doing things that improve efficiency and sequestration, you are offsetting the amount that is going into the atmosphere. So that's the general theory of carbon offsetting. Now, there are various activities that can do carbon offsets, and I thought there were many that could be selected. In fact, there are lots of other carbon offset funds throughout the world, throughout the states. But I was sitting around thinking about this with my friend Larry Weymouth, who's with 350 Corvallis, and he told me about one carbon offset fund that he's doing in order to achieve a neutral carbon footprint for himself. We'll get to carbon footprints in just a bit. So then question kind of came up, okay, you are donating to this carbon offset fund. You donate so much, and they're supposed to do activities that reduce the amount of carbon that's going into the atmosphere. How do you know that for sure? How do you know what they're doing? The trees that they're planting on the other side of the world are going to survive a year, or if anybody ever cares about that? How do you know what the money is going to? Is it like 55% of it's going into salaries and administration, or is it really going to the activity that you want it to go to? So kicking around these questions and knowing that people are giving money to carbon offset funds that go out of this area, I said, you know, we're doing a lot of stuff here in town that actually is sustainable and is reducing the amount of carbon emissions, offsetting it. If we can spotlight those and support those activities, that would be actually doing two things. One is that you are benefiting the climate, the global climate as a whole, but two, you're also benefiting your local community. So that's where I kind of came up with the ideas of a carbon offset fund that is local to this area. So that is how the carbon offset fund got started, to be able to have that opportunity for people to see where their money is going, to have it benefit this community, and also to improve the global climate. So let me walk you through the carbon offset fund. I'm going to kind of flip up the website here in just a bit. There will probably be some questions coming in. That would be great. I will get to them after I do a run through here, and hopefully we'll have a good amount of time for Q&A. Let's see here. Okay. How's that looking?
That looks great.
Okay, all right. So this is Corvallis Carbon Offset.us, or if you want to get fancy, Corvallis Carbon Offset Us. It's the homepage, and it basically runs through all the things you can do on the website, which is kind of what I'll do. I'll talk about the strategies of the Carbon Offset Fund, tell you a little bit about carbon offsets, maybe how they are different from renewable energy credits. You can calculate your carbon footprint, which is actually sort of important. It'll say how you can reduce your carbon footprint and where the donations to this fund will go, and a little bit about us and our partners. So fun thing is, I put on the website in the beginning is, it says we're up to 420 parts per million CO2. Originally, when I made this website, it was like about 410 or so. And today we are at 424 or 420. No, yeah, 424. So it's getting higher. We're kind of going the wrong direction here. So that's not what we really want to see. All right, let me go back to the website here. Let's see, it's gonna let me go back.
It looks like it might have opened another window for you.
Yeah, that is odd. Oh, here we go. I see, it's hiding behind all this stuff here. Hang on a second here. I'll pull this back up here. And just reshare this screen. There we go. Okay. So, let me see. Let's start with carbon offsets. And I kind of explained a little bit what carbon offsets do. There are many ways to offset your carbon. Talks a little bit about the local fund. And down here on this page, if you are interested in how this differs from renewable energy credits, there's a paragraph down here as well. I don't want to get into too much of that, but I will say that the Blue Sky program run by Pacific Power and the Smart Energy program run by Northwest Natural tend to be more renewable energy credits rather than true carbon offsets. I know the terminology used is kind of fluid in that everybody refers to it as carbon offsets, but there's actually a difference in what carbon offsets are. Carbon offsets have to show a true additivity to what is going on rather than just things that would normally occur. You can't really save carbon offsets. To an extent, you really can't trade them or save them up and apply them to a dirty energy source. So they talk about carbon trading. That's probably more with RECs than carbon offset funds. All right. So what are the different ways that we selected in this area for the carbon offset fund? And we thought about, okay, there are many things that are going on here, many places that we can offset, but in general, there's three ways that I think really resonate with this community. First of all, is the generation of clean, renewable energy. And that has to do with solar power that's going on. That is probably the main type of activity for offsetting carbon because you are generating clean energy rather than from fossil fuels. That is actually being done by two organizations that are supported by this fund. One is Seeds for the Soul. You probably heard from Julie Williams last night. Good fun. And the other one is Solarize Corvallis, which has a partnership with the Oregon Clean Power Cooperative. And you may have heard from Dan Orzek on Tuesday. There's also a little bit of changing over of and electrifying hot water heaters into hybrid hot heat pump hot water heaters, and that is being done as well under Seeds for the Soul. So that is the first big strategy that this community and is very interested in and is supported by the fund. The second one is sequestering carbon from the from the atmosphere. I think that one is kind of a fun one because people like trees, they like planting, but it goes a little bit beyond that. This one is actually supporting Marys River Watershed Council, who looks at conservation of areas and restoration of watersheds, oftentimes by planting and putting in trees to help stabilize the areas, as well as to cool the water and provide a carbon sink for our atmosphere. The third major way that we are offsetting carbon in this community is kind of basic and a little bit boring, all right, but it's to enhance energy efficiency. Stuff like sealing leaks, replacing single pane windows with double pane windows, adding insulation. These are things that really are very cost effective because you don't have to spend a lot to save a lot. The primary organization that we've identified that does this is the weatherization program of the Community Services Consortium. They have a weatherization program that is partially funded by federal funds as well as donations and the Community Services Consortium. They're targeting mainly lower income types of residences, and they don't have to be owned by the person there. They can be mobile homes, they can be rental units, and so that is helping the community for people who can't really afford it and really need to have a more efficient type of system. I should also say that the Seeds for the Soul oftentimes targets low to moderate income types of households, and that is also a benefit for the community because those people not only need to watch their budgets, but it is advantageous for their community, our community, and the global community. So anyway, these are the three strategies that we targeted for the Carbon Offset Fund. So for individuals, why should an individual be interested in a carbon offset fund? And it's kind of the extra things that can't be accounted for by insulation, can't be accounted for by adding solar panels or planting trees because, well, quite frankly, a number of people have done that or they aren't able to do that. This is something very simple that they can do for themselves, for the community, and for the global climate. So one kind of idea is to ask yourselves, all right, how much carbon am I generating on an annual basis or on a monthly basis? And how do I calculate that? Fortunately, there are many different calculators available to a person. There is the Cool Climate Calculator, which is actually comes up originally from UC Berkeley. There are ones that are more campus oriented. This one was used at OSU. If you really want to get into the details, you can download a spreadsheet from EPA, and it'll give you a bunch of different estimates on your different activities. You might have traveled somewhere, and that the flight that you took put a fair amount of CO2 in the air, but it's not like you can stuff it back into the plane, or you can't untake the trip. So we have an air travel calculator. Some people are interested in how much carbon footprint are particular consumptions of food. So that is of interest. And we know that some of the mathematical terms that are used are difficult because they're metric versus regular tons, or they come in weird things called therms instead of BTUs. So there's a whole website over here that has the equivalencies to help you translate the numbers into things that are more familiar to people and eventually into an amount of carbon. Typically, carbon, we talk about it as tons of CO2 equivalents, or how much carbon dioxide in a ton, which is a unit that is more universally recognized. So once you have your carbon footprint, you can decide how to how much you would like to donate and what you would like to do to reduce that carbon footprint. So things, if you can look through the three strategies and do those individually, or some people just find it a little bit more convenient to donate to the Carbon Offset Fund. Current equivalency is $65 for every ton of CO2. That goes to a charitable organization. It's the Corvallis Environmental Center. And from there, it is distributed to our partners, our beneficiary partners, who are Solarize Corvallis, Seeds for the Sol, the Weatherization Program for the Community Service Consortium, and Marys River Watershed Council. You can do credit cards, you can do checks. We haven't gotten into Bitcoin yet. These are our partners, as you see below. If you want to know more about the organizations and what they do, they are all local. They are here. You can actually go see what they do. You can participate in some of the activities they have, and you probably already know some of the people. So all these are charitable organizations. The Carbon Offset Fund covers these four as far as the donations go. The Carbon Offset Fund does not have any paid staff, so all the money goes to charitable activities. Want to know a little bit more about us? We're the steering committee is the Corvallis Interfaith Climate Justice Committee. We originally got help started with the Imagine Corvallis Action Network through the Corvallis Climate Action Advisory Board, which is meeting tonight. It's probably where everybody is right now. Other partners are the Sustainability Coalition, Corvallis Environmental Center, which is our fiscal sponsor, the Corvallis Climate Action Alliance, and 350 Corvallis. So that is the quick run through of the website, and we're actually open here for questions.
Thank you, Brian. That was very informative. And considering other communities that might be looking to replicate a similar fund, could you give some information, if you have it, sort of financially, how they can get started? Where you does the offset fund have its own bank account, or did it sort of piggyback off of, you know, as an account of a different organization? How did that look?
So what we did here in Corvallis is that we looked for a fiscal sponsor who had status for charitable as a 501c3 charitable organization. And that was kind of important because I wanted it to not only have the recognition of official charitability, but the money was going to charitable organizations as well. So there's a whole chain of community and charitability that I wanted built into this fund. It doesn't need to be that way in another community. I don't know if that is available in all communities for fiscal sponsorships, but one could actually do it as a private fund or as a 501c3 if you wanted to make your own organization. You can have it within a faith organization, which is where we started, or it could just be a brand new organization that's not necessarily associated with any particular faith group. That's just where we started.
Fantastic.
Let's see.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I'm just thinking of some of the things I thought about if one were to start it in their own community. One of the things is find in your community what activities are being done sustainably to reduce the amount of carbon or to help sequester the amount of carbon. They might be something entirely different, like agriculture. Some agriculture may be able to show a carbon negative type of activity in the things they grow. Plus, then you're also looking for a benefit for the local community. If that, let's give the example of agriculture. If they're growing stuff and some of that food is being provided to the farmers market locally, that is a benefit for the community as well as for the global climate. So a couple of different things that really want to look for and include. Then you want a steering committee or some oversight over it. You want to make sure that where the money is going is actually going to the proper activities. You want something that people can see in your community and take interest in. If it's far away, like in the rainforest of the Amazon, that's not so accessible. But if it happens to be something, downtown, for example, that's cool. People can go down, they can see it, they can actually have tours. And a lot of these organizations have ability to have the public participate in their activities. So I think those are good things for the community.
Awesome. Thank you. That was helpful. We have a couple questions in the chat. Deborah asks, would you describe some of Mary's River projects? Oh, the Mary's Rivers projects.
So Mary's River Watershed Council covers everything that sort of drains into the Marys River as well as the Marys River. There has been a lot of the property is not public property. They work with private landowners who are interested in soil conservation. They're wondering what they can do for the climate, because there are landowners who are actually very interested and very concerned about climate. A lot of what they do are to restore areas that may have previously been productive for vegetation, planting trees like oak trees, ash trees, soil stabilization, providing trees to cool the water so that the aquatic life that's in the water can survive much better. They sometimes have to deal with beavers. Some landowners don't like them quite as much, and Marys River Watershed will say, well, if you do this, or if you let them have this area, actually it could be a benefit to your hydrology, for example. So they're available as an advisory service. They do have some funds for providing trees and other things for planting, and should go down and talk to them. They're nice people.
It's really cool. Michael asks, what does it mean to be a partner? For example, like 350 Corvallis, not as a recipient like Seeds for the Soul.
Partners, it's a little bit of a looser term. I think the Sustainability Coalition also talks about partners as well. They are people who are supporting, not necessarily with financial funds, but supportive of what we do. They are very interested in improving the community as well as the global climate. They are people who will help get the word out about the activities that our beneficiary organizations do, as well as what the Carbon Offset Fund is about. There are people who are interested in helping people to understand what their carbon footprint is and some of the things that they can do to help reduce that. We appreciate our partners.
Very nice. Does anyone else have any questions they'd like to add to the discussion? I had a couple questions, but I felt like you were answering them just as quick as I was thinking of them.
How long ago was the fund started? Well, it was interesting because it actually took pretty close to 2 years to just get it started. I went to a lot of different organizations in town to find out what they were doing. One of the issues came up is that there were a number of organizations that did sustainable activities, did things that were probably helpful in reducing the amount of carbon that was going into the atmosphere or sequestering it, but they had a hard time trying to figure out how much. Being able to measure it, to quantitate it somehow was really important, so that I could do this calculation that said, $65 per ton of CO2 equivalent that was sequestered or reduced. In order to get to that number, I need a way to measure the amount of carbon that they've saved through their activities. And some of them just really didn't know. So that was a big challenge. Finding the type of projects where people could, from the public, could participate, could see for themselves what was going on. That was a selective type of choice, because there were activities that were going on that, yeah, they were good, but it wouldn't be something that people could go out and look at or see, or there weren't people to talk to, at least. So I think it's important to look for organizations like that. So yeah, it took about a couple of years, then finding a fiscal sponsor, getting agreements with each of the partners as to they will use our funds for this and not for going out and partying, which I don't think any of them would do, but it's good to have an agreement, a written agreement, and we try to renew those every couple of years. So this fund has actually been on the internet for about 2 years or so, 1.5 to 2 years, relatively new.
I feel like with as much information as you all have gathered on the website and everything outlined, I would have thought it's been around much longer. It seems really well established.
Thank you. We definitely were trying to consider all the things that would not only be covered by a normal carbon offset fund, but something that would resonate with the Corvallis community. If you don't have a fund or organizations that people have a feeling for, have a heart for, that they understand, then it becomes difficult to try to tell the public what they're about. So that's always useful too. Michael has a question.
Yeah, on Rex, that bother, the whole blue sky thing bothers me. Blue Sky have told me explicitly that purchasing Rex incentivizes renewable energy. Okay, statement one. Statement two, they have told me that purchasing Rex has no impact on Pacific Power's fuel mix. And the two, Blue Sky will talk up a storm with me. But whenever I say I can't reconcile those two statements in my mind, to me, they can't both be true. Explain to me how they are. They just go off the radar, and I can't reach them, and they won't take my calls, and they won't respond to my emails. What's your take on Rex?
Well, Recs are kind of interesting because they are, you can actually create more and more Recs than by just basically buying more money to them. They're used oftentimes for trading in carbon markets, and I haven't actually sat down and looked at Rex specifically the way that Pacific Power uses them. I know, let's see, not Columbia River Power. It's there's another group that uses both Rex and carbon offsets, and they distinguish between the two. I don't have a real good feel for Rex, and part of the problem is that they come in different dollars and different sizes, and sort of a more imaginary, though I think they can probably be used in a in a rational manner. I just don't have the system that, to analyze that specifically. I think it's difficult because it doesn't specify particularly what is going high. It doesn't say the specific activity that is that the RECs are going to. It just is like this floating unit that you can apply it to anything. So it's a little odd from that standpoint, and it's nothing you can go and see what they're doing. You buy 3 units of RECs. Okay, where do they go? What are they doing? What did it go into? That is a bit of a difficulty too. One of the things I didn't want the carbon offsets to go into is into a trading market. That's where you can cap and trade different things. And you're pitting different types of activities such as wind power against insulation. And while in theory you could save equivalent amounts of CO2, the benefit to the community is different and the actual mode is different. So rather than trying to create everything, well, let's see, what would be an example? You could take a plan and reduce everything to dollars. And therefore, by reducing everything to dollars, you can say, okay, it was the cost of the product, it was the price of the injury that it caused to people, and you could do a dollar cost evaluation that way. Some people do that with carbon offsets. They reduce all the tons of carbon, everything into tons of carbon. And I understand the reason for that, but I also want to know what is applied to, where it's coming from, and how that actually benefits the activity, the specific activity that it goes to. So I don't know if that really answers your question that well, Michael, but yeah, I agree. It's kind of intriguing, kind of interesting as to what RECs are as far as Pacific Power's Blue Sky program.
Well, more on the Blue Sky program. They publicize the fact that they do support solar projects and stuff. Stuff is funded with Blue Sky dollars. The money the extra money that people pay for Blue Sky, it funds this solar project and that solar project. Sounds great. So I asked them, okay, what percent of the money that comes in through Blue Sky goes out in these grants? Well, that varies according to market conditions. Last year, this according to Blue Sky, the guy who runs Blue Sky, last year, or what, I don't know if I'm talking 2022 and 2021 or 20, give me a year or two to slide either way. Last year, none, 0. This year, we hope 10%. Now, if you're donating to a charity, which, 1 year gives nothing to it, nothing goes to what you're giving to, and the next year it's 10%. That's not a charity, that's not one you're going to keep giving to. That and I came into this whole Blue Sky thing really enthusiastic, really wanting to advocate that the UUFC go full blown on Blue Sky. And the more I dug into it, the more it just seems a scam. And I would love to be shown otherwise. But talking to the top folks in Blue Sky, boy, it doesn't do it. It's not reassuring.
it is unfortunate that it's been touted as a green way to offset whatever carbon that it would otherwise be emitted. And you're right, it really doesn't affect the power mix that Pacific Power has. That is mandated by state rule, and there's a minimum that the state has to, that the utility has to come to, which changes year by year as you go forward. I see that law pushing the power mix, but not the RECs. Jed, you have a question?
I had a random idea roll into my head that I hadn't entertained before. So I just wonder if there's like situations where, like with the city, where they're doing their budget and they're trying to figure out what they can do, and they know they have maybe some energy trusts matching things, but they just can't quite make it work with the budget. But if they had like an extra couple of $1,000s, like put them over some hump, they would be able to like replace some really awful piece of equipment that was super inefficient. And just made me wonder if that's a potential future loose end to potentially connect, that's kind of community based, where if you found out that some piece of the city government was in that position, and a few hundred more dollars would get them over that hump, and it would make kind of a significant reduction in carbon emissions, that you do like a quick little campaign. Who wants to donate $10 or something, get 50 people to do it. Has that kind of idea ever been floating around? Or I don't know, I'm guessing there might be like a few kind of correct pressure point people in the city that might be able to know such things.
I think Karen may be able to respond to that one.
Well, that Jed sounds like Electrify Corvallis, which does take on projects to electrify and does sort of crowdsourcing to do that. So that does sound that way. I actually put on my camera because I was in a conversation, was invited to, and was in a conversation with some representatives from Pacific Power years ago. And we were talking about various ways to generate power. And they were actually saying, wind power and solar power are actually cheaper for us. And my question immediately became, Michael, then why do you charge extra for blue sky if it is to support these things? Well, all of a sudden there was silence. And I didn't think I was asking anything out of turn. It just occurred to me that if it's cheaper for them to invest in renewable sources rather than keep their dirty coal power plant up in Montana going, because otherwise it's a stranded asset, why not pass, what's going on here with blue sky? So I think you're right to be a little skeptical. We want the best, of course, but that isn't always the truth. So that's my experience with them. Oh, and thank you, Brian, for sharing the carbon offset fund. Yes.
Oh, you're welcome. I would ask you what's new at the Climate Action Advisory Board, but maybe that's a little bit of a longer conversation. I'm glad you were able to jump from there to here.
Yeah, it was nip and tuck whether I'd make it at time.
Very good. Let's see, Christy, are there other questions in the chat?
Larry added here, and I'm not sure if you covered this. Are RECs part of the Corvallis Carbon Offset Fund?
They are not. RECs are not part of the carbon offset fund. It is just purely carbon offsets and activities that are supported through other charitable organizations in our community.
Larry also added before his question and mentioned that RECs are verifiable.
Should be.
It's interesting. There's probably a minimum of what is needed. There are various verifying organizations out there. Some of them have been called into question lately as to whether they are just looking at the policy end rather than actually going out and checking the measurements and the accounting. They're not cheap. Having a verification and being certified for your RECs or your carbon offsets takes a substantial amount of money. At some point, I hope to have excuse me, a verification system for the carbon offset fund, but right now it's small enough that it would take a considerable chunk of the budget out, and I'd rather that go to the organizations that we're supporting rather than something that we can just stick a seal on the website that says verified carbon offset, etc. So we'll get there hopefully.
Michael adds RECs are verifiably what?
I think a little more discussion about RECs may be in order at some point. And is there a particular person at the city that we should be talking to about this? Michael, do you have any ideas?
I do not. No, I don't know anybody. All my kinds of conversations have been with the Blue Sky folks themselves, who, like Karen indicated, they're lovely people to talk to, and they'll talk about all sorts of things until they suddenly won't talk anymore. Then bam, you're out.
And Brian, you probably want to talk to the person who's asking, are RECs part of the Corvallis Carbon Offset Fund? You need to make that clear because our conversation has gotten into RECs.
Oh, I'm not sure if I caught that. Yeah, there are no RECs involved with the Corvallis Carbon Offset Fund. That is true. It is just purely for carbon offsetting through the activities that our organizations here are engaged with. There's no trading of the carbon offset funds, carbon offsets like you can trade RECs. You can't save them up. They are just purely the activity that occurs and supporting that. Let's see, somebody stuck in a comment there. I didn't see it when it popped up.
Yes, Court asks, isn't the city going to offset with Oregon Shines?
I'm not familiar with that program. Court, can you elaborate a little bit on what that is?
Yeah, Oregon Shines is a community solar program, and you can actually buy solar that is in the amount of the electricity you use. And so that then becomes basically a substitution for whatever you're getting from either Consumers Power or Pacific Power. And I believe the city is going to offset all its electricity with Oregon Shines when Oregon Shines gets up and running. It's just new. It's a new program, very similar to the one you're trying to operate, but it is basically a solar offset, and you can actually buy solar energy. And I think Pacific Power is required to credit you with that amount of solar.
What does Oregon Shines do with the money that they received?
They build solar. It's community solar. They build solar systems, and what you're doing is you're paying to help them build those solar systems, and so that becomes solar that it's like buying solar. You don't put it on your roof, you put it out somewhere where they're using it to put it in the grid somewhere else.
As Dan Ozek says, there's not a lot of community in Oregon Shines version of community solar. It is a for-profit subscription service. You get a 5%, normal income folks get a 5% discount on their power bill. Low income folks get a higher discount than that. So it's a subscription service.
And for those who want to read more, I've added the Oregon Shines website to the chat so you could investigate a bit on your own.
Thank you, Court, for bringing that up. Interesting program.
Well, I think the city is very proud of themselves because they're claiming they're offsetting all their non-renewable energy use that they purchase. So they will be 100% quote unquote carbon free. But you know, I don't know the veracity of that particular claim.
And which city was that?
It's the city of Corvallis.
City of Corvallis was going with Oregon Shines?
Yes.
Interesting.
I'm intrigued to know where that started. We've Seeds for the Soul has been learning more about Oregon Shines, and we'd not heard anything in connection to the city of Corvallis.
That would be interesting because I understand the city of Corvallis was was doing Blue Sky.
Well,
Yeah.
I'm reflecting on a meeting I went to a month or two ago where that announcement was made, and you might talk to Gabe Shepard. He was the one that was very proud of the city for going to this basically being all carbon zero. So anyway, I don't know a lot about it. I know we invited Oregon Shines to the Green Living Expo, and it's not possible for individual users to buy it now, but it will be. And they contacted me, probably 2 or 3 months ago, and said that they were interested in advertising their program in Corvallis, so we invited them, but they're not geared up at the moment to take individuals. So
I see. Very interesting. I'll have to look into that.
They are signing up individuals for later when capacity comes available, and there is maybe I was gonna say something about, is there possibly some tension with other providers of community solar, and I ain't gonna go there. Oregon Shines is signing people up, and some say they're trying to wrap everybody up to lock other providers of community solar out because they will have signed everybody up.
Well, Michael makes a good point. They claim that anybody who signs up will pay 5% less for their electricity. That is their carrot, I guess, to get people to sign up with them. They will guarantee you will save 5%. So at least 5%.
That will be interesting because not only are they receiving less per kilowatt hour or per energy unit, they also are using that part of that to build solar. So I'm not sure how this works out financially.
Well, my experience with Northwest Natural is that not Northwest Natural, Pacific Power, is that I asked them what they were selling me for their blue sky. They claimed that they were selling me about 90% wind. So when you look at it, wind's about 2 cents a kilowatt hour. Solar's maybe 3. Natural gas is 6. So they're charging me for natural gas at 6 cents a kilowatt hour and giving me a credit for wind at 2 or 3 cents an hour, kilowatt hour. So I thought it was a kind of a screwed deal because I was getting back cheaper energy than they were charging me for. So actually I got out of Blue Sky for that reason. But so anyway.
Interesting. Yeah.
Looking at the time here, we've got about 2 minutes left. If anyone has any other questions, discussion points before we go.
If not, I'll just say that the Carbon Offset Fund is kind of a newer approach in this area to addressing climate change at the local level. It's a relatively simple and effective way for individuals and businesses to take action when supporting, as well as supporting local sustainability types of activities. Benefit for the community, a benefit for the world as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. That was fantastic. And I appreciate all the work you've put into this, both as part of the Corvallis community and as a recipient with Seeds for the Soul. So thank you.
You're
Thanks,
welcome.
Brian.
Everybody have a good evening.
Thank you all. Thank you, Brian. Thank you, everybody. Good night, all.